and welcome to the virtual farewell for Peter Dawkins, Vice-Chancellor and President of Victoria University. I'm Gai Hamilton, Chancellor of Victoria University, and I thank you for being with us today, our staff, students, partners, friends and family, as we celebrate the 10 years that Peter Dawkins has been Vice-Chancellor of VU and wish him well in his retirement. Today, we will view a short documentary film, Farewell to Peter Dawkins, a Vice-Chancellor's Legacy, that reflects on Peter's leadership, achievements and highlights at the university, as well as his influence in the west of Melbourne. Following the documentary, we will hear from Peter, and he will share with us his reflections about his time at VU. I hope that you are watching with colleagues and friends and are ready to enjoy today's documentary. I encourage VU staff to share your watch party photos and messages on Yammer and our other guests by sending to the email address on the screen. But first, I'd like to introduce one of the many treasures of VU, Associate Provost Indigenous, Karen Jackson, to perform an acknowledgement of country. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Chancellor. Hello, I'm Karen Jackson, or KJ, a proud Yorta Yorta woman and Associate Provost Indigenous at VU. I'm very happy to be performing as the Acknowledgement Queen here today. But before I do, Peter, thank you for your support in encouraging and promoting collaborative ways for VU and Moondarney Balloch to work towards ensuring cultural safety for staff and making culturally safe spaces for Aboriginal staff and students in the university. I also thank you for introducing the Aboriginal Safe Spaces and Black Lives Matter statement within the Moondarney Balloch statement, which spoke about the impact of the importance of Black Lives Matter movement and Aboriginal deaths in custody. This statement helped create a number of amazing activities and resources, including being able to come onto campus for smoking ceremonies and the wonderful library resource on Black authors and Black films. I am always honoured and proud to provide an acknowledgement of country. It is a chance to speak to and remind you of the deep knowledge held and shared by Aboriginal traditional owners. I acknowledge and pay my respect to the Boonwurrung and Woiwurrung peoples of the Kulin on whose land I am on today. I thank them for showing me their footprints in the landscape, for sharing their creation stories and language with us at VU, and for being part of our university events and activities. To finish, Peter Dawkins, Vice-Chancellor, boss, thank you for opening more doors to spread important Aboriginal work through this university. I wish you all the very best and a most deadly retirement. I would now like to welcome George Pappas, former Chancellor of Victoria University.
In 2010, towards the end of my first year as Chancellor, the University Council and I appointed Professor Peter Dawkins as the third Vice-Chancellor and President of Victoria University. Peter stood out from a high-quality set of candidates who were interviewed by our selection committee. Indeed, two others from our final shortlist were subsequently appointed Vice-Chancellors at other universities. However, Peter really impressed us with his vision for VU. He understood Victoria University's position and role in post-secondary education, and he argued very clearly that we had the opportunity to become a great university of the 21st century. A great university of the 21st century, he explained, was not like the great universities of the past that were built on generations of educating select cohorts of elite students. Rather, a great university of the future would provide the highest quality education for any student from any background. VU with its dual sector status, diverse student population, and Western Suburbs base, was uniquely positioned to achieve that goal. And of course, later, we articulated that as our moral purpose. In realising our vision, Peter not only instilled this moral purpose into the university community, he also led a transformational agenda to make VU a highly innovative, agile and respected institution, firmly connected to the west of Melbourne, with reach and influence beyond our national borders. As well as entrenching himself in the transformation of the university, Peter ingrained himself into the region by moving to the west with his wife Sue, where they have both become a part of their community. And to cap it all off, Peter has become a passionate supporter of the Western Bulldogs. Peter, I'm looking forward to sharing some days in retirement with you, and I thank you deeply for your leadership and contributions to Victoria University and to the west of Melbourne over the last 10 years. And now I hope that you all will enjoy the following documentary highlighting Peter's time as Vice-Chancellor and President of Victoria University. Here is Farewell to Peter Dawkins, a Vice-Chancellor's legacy.
I was very interested in the idea of being a Vice-Chancellor of a university that made a difference to students from very diverse backgrounds, and thankfully I got a call saying would I be interested in this role, and so it was a great discussion. It was a very exciting interview process, and I was delighted to be appointed to Victoria University here in the west of Melbourne.
We knew about Peter before he actually applied. A number of people whose opinions we respected said, look, you must look at Peter Dawkins as a potential Vice-Chancellor for your university. So he was brought to our attention. We were also impressed by the vision that he painted for Victoria University. Of course, everybody who applied for Vice-Chancellor said great things about the university and understood what its position was in the higher educational system of the country. Peter, I think, just did a better job of persuading us that our destiny was to be a great university of the 21st century.
What I meant was a great university of a modern, different kind from the old traditional universities, a university that would be great in the way it could transform the lives of students from diverse backgrounds, the way it could make a difference in a world in which everybody needs a tertiary education. That's the kind of great university that I aspired for Victoria University to be.
And it was that kind of vision that I think got us attracted to Peter. In addition, of course, was his experience as a respected academic and also as someone who had run a pretty large government department for the state, because he was the previous Secretary of the Department of Education in Victoria. The other thing that was, I think, strongly in Peter's favour was that he had very, very good access to people in government, both at federal and state level. He was a highly respected person because of his career, and we thought that was important for Victoria University. And of course, as subsequent events demonstrated, it was a great asset that Peter had.
So when I started at Victoria University, there were several things happening at once that created huge challenges. The demand-driven system of higher education, the deregulation of vocational education and opening up the system to private providers, the TAFE cuts that happened. And there was a downturn in the international market at the same time with changes in visa arrangements. All of these things hit together, and allied to that, we had a university with a cost structure that was too heavy, and so that was quite a challenge and needed to be dealt with.
He thought he had entered a perfect storm. And so what I think we were developing from those early days was to say, okay, we've got to do things to correct the deficiencies in the university, but also if we want to prosper, if we want to survive, and if we want to realise our aspiration, we've got to do things differently.
Well, I guess the turning point came in about 2016. That's 5 years in. There was a lot of heavy lifting in those first 5 years to sort of set the place up for potential success. And I think our very existence was under threat. But in 2016, when we developed the second strategic plan and we started thinking about the transformational agenda, and the Western Bulldogs won the flag as well that year, by the way, which was another great thing for the west of Melbourne. I think it's when confidence started coming in to the university that yes, we've got over the worst of this. Now we've got to build for the future. We've set a platform. Now we need to do the transformational change that will mean that the university can be a great university of the 21st century.
Heraclitus said the only constant is change, and he might have added that you can either embrace change or get run over by it. 17 years into this century, it's clear that no corner of society will be spared Heraclitus's dictum. But what VU's leadership team and staff are doing is to ensure that change is securely located in VU's own culture and history, as well as its unique role in Melbourne's West.
Peter's role in the transformational agenda and moral purpose of VU has been unbelievably significant. His really entrenched belief in access, fairness and equity has really driven the need for change. And in order to do the right thing by both staff and students, this whole transformation has really had those core values of Peter's and, of course, our broader community as well, right at the heart. So his influence has been really unparalleled, I think.
We were about to engage in a major transformational agenda that involved a lot of effort and a lot of change for the university, which isn't always easy for everyone. And the thing that I felt would make sure we could do it and do it all together in a united way was to focus on our moral purpose, to transform the lives of students, to transform the community in which we operate. And I think it has proved to be a great binding force for the university and will continue to be, I'm sure, into the future.
He started looking at what VU stood for way back then, and I think it's probably the start of where our moral purpose came from. I remember him summarising a discussion that we'd had after dinner one night, and 3, 4, 5 years later it morphed into what VU's moral purpose is. And I think that ability to understand that the west of Melbourne and what we need to do for the west of Melbourne was something that really impressed me the first time I met with Peter, and that's continued through his 10 years.
The reason is really our students, first and foremost, and our community. And I think it was Tom Clark, who was then Deputy Chair of the Academic Board, said to me, this is a kind of moral purpose, isn't it, that the university's got? And I latched onto that and said, well, I think this is it. It is a moral purpose, and we need to talk about the moral purpose, not just think about it. And so from that day on, I talked about the moral purpose of the university, and it seems to resonate very well with the whole university community.
He eventually described our moral purpose: to provide the best education possible for any student from any background. So we were both pretty well in tune with that vision for VU, and I think that makes life a lot easier. If both chairman and chief executive have a shared view of where the organisation should be going, believe me, that makes a huge difference to the success of an organisation, and I think that probably underpinned the whole constructive relationship that we had. We're very different people. I think, as I've said in the past, Peter tends to have an optimistic view of the world. I'm different. He's the glass half full, I'm the glass half empty. Do you want an illustration of that? We were celebrating Victoria University's centenary, and we had a ball. The Bulldogs were playing Richmond that night, and they were behind. And I kept thinking, oh, they're going to lose, they're going to lose. Peter said, no, they're playing well, they're going to win. I bet you they win. And I said, Peter, if the Bulldogs win tonight, they beat Richmond, I will dance with you in front of all of these people on the dance floor of the Sofitel ballroom. Guess what? They won. So we danced together in front of all of those Victoria University people.
Oh, how amazing. To have someone who's an eternal optimist as the Vice-Chancellor is terrific. And in the centenary year in 2016, when we were preparing for the centenary year and looking at, well, what would be the milestones that would make this a really great year to celebrate for VU? And Peter had no hesitation in saying, well, of course, the Western Bulldogs will win the grand final as a really important pillar of that centenary celebration. And we were all just a little bit sceptical, I must say, because it had been quite some time since 1954, when the last premiership was won by the Bulldogs.
Oh, well, I actually forecast the Bulldogs would win the 2016 flag back in 2012. So people thought that was a bit of a long shot at the time. I guess it possibly was. But I remember talking to the then coach, who said, well, this team is very talented. And we had several of them as students at Victoria University. So I knew some of those very talented young players like Mitch Wallace and Easton Wood. So I worked out from that 2016 was going to be the year, and that's when I forecast that we would win the flag in 2016, which happened to be the centenary of the founding of our predecessor institution, Footscray Tech. So that seemed a very good year for us to win the flag, given our partnership with the Bulldogs, and so it proved.
And what a significant moment, not only for the VU celebrations, but for the whole west of Melbourne and the broader community. I think everyone in the world felt that if Sydney had actually won that day and beaten the Bulldogs, it would have been a bit like shooting Bambi. But, you know, the Bulldogs really deserved to win, and Peter holds the record now for having predicted it.
Again, back there in 2016, we were seeing data for the university that suggested that we weren't quite achieving what we needed to with our students. There were too many students failing courses, too many students leaving, particularly in first year, which is the most challenging year. So we're in a world in which more and more people are coming into tertiary education. They have to, they need to, it's part of a public policy agenda. We were at the forefront of that, getting students in first in family, students from disadvantaged backgrounds. But we need not only to give them the opportunity, we've got to help them succeed, and they weren't succeeding quite enough. And so we needed to do something transformational to ensure their success. And a traditional form of teaching that comes from perhaps a more elitist model was not fit for purpose. We needed to transform that. And that's what turned into the VU block model, or what we now call the VU way. So first of all, we decided to set up a first-year college because that was the year in which students had the biggest problems, tended to be leaving, too much attrition, not good enough retention. We decided we needed a dedicated first-year college to support first-year students to successfully transition into university. Having established the idea of having a first-year college, we then had to choose the best possible way to teach students in the first year. And we scoured the world for best practice to get a form of learning that was really active, that got students really engaged. This idea of engaged learning was at the centre of what we were trying to find. And we found the block model, which is where students study one subject at a time, in small groups, in classes 9 hours a week, in one subject. And that's a very engaging form of learning that students get really immersed in. And it's active collaborative learning where they do problem solving. They're not just learning facts and figures in in a sort of a transmissive style of education. It's this very engaged, deep learning.
In introducing the block model, the thing I really value Peter's contribution was that he went and taught a class himself. And I can remember back in the days of business and industry, where you say the best way for a leader to actually understand their business is to get on the front line. So Peter could have stayed in the ivory tower, but he went deliberately to teach a class, to see how this actually worked. That, I think, was the mark of a man who really believed what he was doing and was prepared to get on the front line to really understand how the block model could actually be applied and was it working effectively.
Well, the reason I wanted to teach the block model was we were asking our staff to undertake a new style of teaching, a new style of working with students that required a lot of skill and a different approach from the traditional one. And I thought, if I expect my staff to do this, I want to do it myself, and also just to convince myself that we had adopted the right methodology.
It's a remarkable thing for a Vice-Chancellor to be teaching a class at this level. They have a lot of demands on their time. But Peter decided that if he was introducing this to the university, that he'd better do it himself. And so everyone ought to be able to see him doing it if they were expected to do it as well. So he taught a 4-week block unit in first-year economics, and that required him to be in front of the class for 9 hours a week and do a lot of preparation as well, and get used to teaching again too.
And what sort of teacher was Peter?
Look, I think he was a pretty good teacher. I think that he was very alert to the way or to the level of understanding which the class had. He was looking for the signs that people had understood something and looking for those who weren't getting it, and then going back to help them out.
I think it was the most satisfying teaching experience I've had in my career, because you really get to know the students and you get to understand the problems that they face, because you've got a group of 30 students for 9 hours a week for 4 weeks, and you really do interact with them in a way that you can't in big lecture theatres with large numbers of students. And so it enables you to know individually which students are finding which bits easy, which issues they're finding difficult. You also get to know a bit about their backgrounds, their family situation, and the problems they might be having at home, which means that they're facing particular difficulties in a week in which they struggle to get an assignment in or something like that because of what's going on at home. And so that deep interaction with students was something that I experienced more through this experience than at any previous time in my academic career.
Peter just wants us to get the most out of all the opportunities available to us on campus. And I think it's really important to have a role model like Peter who will, check in with us and, see how we're going and encourage us to do even more. He encourages us students to really go above and beyond and be optimistic in our learnings.
One of the early stages of transformation was to say the university should become part of the community. So Footscray should become a university town. So the university is not a separate institution. It's not, a typical sandstone university. It's part of the community.
Peter's real desire to understand the West and make a difference in the West led him to establishing the West of Melbourne Advisory Committee, chaired by one of our council members who has a real understanding also and commitment to the West, Liz Beattie. And through that committee, Peter was able to attract some significant heavy hitters from the Western region community to take part and help advise him as to how to really best serve that community and embed VU as a valuable contributor throughout the region. And Peter's been terrific in really leading that charge and understanding the unique positioning of the Western region and the need for such knowledge.
Had the pleasure of meeting Peter very early on in my tenure as well, and I was immediately struck by his passion for the West, a bit of what Jim has already touched on, but also his passion for the Western Bulldogs. I think the hallmark of Peter's approach to this area is his care. I think institutions like VU and some of the other members of WOMETA have really become pillars of the West over time in really representing the west of Melbourne and the people within. And I think Peter's taken that responsibility really seriously throughout his tenure and certainly in the time that I've known him.
When I came to the west of Melbourne, I completely fell in love with the place. The cultural diversity is just fantastic, and the sense of identity with the region is very strong. And so I felt it very important to get to know as many people around the west of Melbourne in different parts as I could and get involved in working with people in local government, people in different community groups. And that's been one of the great experiences of being at Victoria University. Victoria University needs to provide for this hugely growing population. The university will itself need to grow and find a way to serve communities all around this very, very rapidly growing region.
Peter led the process that actually identified developments that I think will set the university up for the future, well beyond Peter's tenure, and that's setting up the university. And it will be one of the legacies, I think, that Peter will be able to look back on in the future and say, during my time, these initiatives started. Look how different the university is now, given the status of some of that fantastic infrastructure.
I always thought 10 years would be a good period to be Vice-Chancellor. 5 years too short. I think once you've got 10 years, you're starting to reach your use-by date. There's a big risk that you're not going to add a lot more value after that. And I'm no spring chicken either. So, no, it's a pretty good innings, I think, 10 years. And so although, you know, I leave with sadness, I also leave with joy about having had 10 wonderful years, and it's time to move on to someone else to bring something new into the university.
They often say that timing is everything, and Peter definitely was the man for the times for VU over the last 10 years, none more so than 2020 when, through the whole COVID challenge, he stood us in such good stead with his wise counsel, very, very lovely smile on even the worst of days, and that absolute belief that everything was going to be okay.
I think I'm pleased that I've been here for the full year this year. If I'd have been leaving as COVID-19 was hitting, that would have been very unsatisfactory because it was another shock to the university. I was confident that we were now used to finding our way through these kind of shocks, but also very keen that I could work on trying to stabilise the university in what was a new environment where we had to move very quickly. The problems will continue on of dealing with this crisis, but at least I think we've now sort of landed on a plan for the future and hopefully an environment in which my successor can pick that up and now deal with the ongoing challenges. I received a lot of kind emails and letters, and that was nice, sort of connecting with not only people in the university but others that I'd been involved with over the 10-year period. It was very, very nice to have them contact me and comment on the fact that I was going.
Hi Peter, 10 years already, it's hard to believe, isn't it?
We've seen you dance the Zorba, learn what a fidget spinner is, jump into an Insta booth, and of course kick the footy at many occasions over the years.
Through our time working together with donors and community, what has always impressed me is your heart. You placed importance on equality and care, celebrating and supporting difference.
Victoria University, Australia's #1 sports university, is going to miss you.
You've made such a difference to the countless numbers of students that have come through VU, particularly students from disadvantaged backgrounds.
It's been extraordinary to watch how you've always encouraged the university to be involved with some of the biggest public policy debates that Australia faces, especially for those that will help the most vulnerable people in our society.
When I first came to VU, I was really struck by the genuine interest that you took in the work of the Centre of Policy Studies and the way you gave us a real opportunity to develop a voice.
You have always believed in the strength and the power of the VU community, and that has paid off.
You have created a sense of all in it together at the university that is precious, and that's what we're going to go forward with.
You are at once an amazing leader, inspiring and strategic, and also a wonderful human being.
We have a great deal to thank you for. You're by far the most open, the friendliest, and the most disruptive Vice-Chancellor I've ever worked for.
My first year at VU has been full of surprises. A bushfire, a pandemic, a lockdown. But perhaps the biggest surprise has been working with a boss who has nevertheless encouraged us to stretch our wings and be bold.
We actually joined VU at exactly the same time, and over the years I've been lucky enough to work closely with you, and your leadership of VU's transformation has been truly inspirational.
You're a leader I truly admire. You are supportive and encouraging, personable and honest. It has been a privilege to work alongside you.
In your busy schedule, you have always had time to discuss Timor with me and to support the program.
We have certainly shared lots of very interesting times. One of the more unusual experiences we had that always sticks in my mind was the day we had lunch at the Flower Drum with Mr. Lee, who owns the Footscray Markets. And as per usual, these lunches tended to go longer than planned, and we ended up running late for our next meeting. I remember the two of us running down Burke Street in our suits to get back on time. I was happy to walk back and apologise for being late, but you, on the other hand, were more conscientious. It's not every day you can say I ran down Burke Street with my Vice-Chancellor, and it's a memory I will always look back on with a smile.
It has been a privilege and an honour to work with you. You have been a steadfast leader this year. It has been a tough year, and I thank you for the support that you've personally shown me, all of our teams, and of course the students who so greatly admire you.
While VU, I know, will always be in your heart, rest assured you leave a legacy of that heart here at VU.
Thank you so much for your friendship over the past decade.
Thank you so much for your bold leadership.
Thank you for being the ultimate cultural diversity champion.
Thank you for your unwavering support.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Peter.
Wishing you all the best.
Cheers.
Thank you again, Peter, and I wish you all the best for your next adventure.
From all of us for being such a great boss over these last 10 years. We love working with you in the office.
And Peter, unfortunately, you didn't have any fellow Bulldog supporters in the team, but today, just for you,
go Dawkins!
I think there's no doubt that Peter should be able to look back on his decade at Victoria University and say, I had some challenges, but I'm satisfied that I was able to meet most of those challenges, and I had a vision for the university, which I think we are, well on the way to realising.
I know that Peter has so much more that he can offer to the west of Melbourne, so I certainly hope that Peter will continue to be part of not just the VU family, but to the west of Melbourne, because there's so much that can be achieved, and the contribution that Peter can make based on the experience that he's had here, but he can also enjoy retirement while he's doing that.
I want him to thoroughly enjoy his little bit of extra time, his little bit of extra freedom. I know he won't go away and be a loss to VU. He'll continue to be such a friend of the organisation and such a friend of the Western region. So I just wish him continued success in everything he does, a lovely, relaxed and long and happy life with Sue, so that they can both enjoy the riches that this region has to offer.
So my legacy, well, look, I think the first thing is that when you take on a leadership role, you always want the thing you're leading to end up in a better shape than it was when you took it on, and that you've made big strides as an organisation. And it's been a very challenging period in many ways, but I do think that we've made the strides. And so I hope that my legacy will be that I made a difference, that I helped the university to move towards this aspiration of being a great university of the 21st century.
I hope you enjoyed that wonderful visual celebration of Peter's achievements, highlights and leadership over his 10 years at VU. I'd like to thank George for his impeccable introduction of the documentary and to KJ for her beautiful acknowledgement of country. I've known Peter for many years and I've been on University Council for almost his entire term as Vice-Chancellor of Victoria University. I could not be more grateful for Peter's steadfast and strategic leadership, compassion and expertise over the last 10 years, and in particular during this last year, which has been extraordinarily challenging. Peter has successfully led the transformation of the university whilst always having the students, the staff and VU community as his highest priority. His greatest legacy is the VU Way, a student-centred and student success-led model of engaged learning in block mode. Victoria University and the West of Melbourne is richer because of your vision, Peter. The students of today and into the future have more opportunity because of your leadership. The communities of our region are stronger and flourish in their diversity because of your ability to share your optimism. Together, this demonstration of what's possible fortifies the future success of Victoria University. Along with everyone watching today, Peter, I sincerely thank you for the role that you have played in that. I thank you for your energy, your direction, your influence, and your impact over the last 10 years as Vice-Chancellor. Peter, although you will be missed as Vice-Chancellor, the university has proudly awarded you the title of Emeritus Professor of Economics at the Mitchell Institute, and you will always be a part of the VU family. Peter, I now invite you to say a few words.
Well, thank you so much, Gay, for your kind words, and thank you, KJ, for your acknowledgement of country and your kind words too. And thank you also to my wife, Sue, for being here with me for this farewell event. And it's really great that the former Chancellor, George Pappas, has been with us here too today. And thank you, George, for your kind remarks too. Thank you to everyone who's joined us this evening. I'm truly honoured that so many people are here with us today, both from inside the university and also our partners and friends. To those of you who are staff members of the university, members of the University Council, or advisors to the university, or have been at any time in the last decade, thank you so much for the magnificent work you have done to enable Victoria University to make such enormous progress in achieving its powerful moral purpose. Our moral purpose, as you heard from George Pappas, is to transform the lives of all of our many students from their very diverse backgrounds and to transform the communities in which we operate, especially the West of Melbourne. I'm very proud of what we have all achieved together in pursuing our moral purpose and in the process becoming increasingly renowned locally, nationally and internationally. It's been a very exciting journey. In that context, a special welcome to those students who've also joined us. You are at the heart of our moral purpose. And to those of you who are partners or friends of the university, thank you for your interest in our university and for the many amazing and diverse collaborations we've worked on together over the last 10 years. For those of you who are family or friends of mine personally, thank you for your friendship and support. On the documentary you've just seen, it was great to hear from the 3 chancellors that I've worked with, reflecting on the journey that we've been on together. It's been fantastic working with all of them over the decade as members of our outstanding University Council, chaired by George Pappas as my Chancellor for my first 9 years, and by Wayne Kaler-Thompson and Gay Hamilton this year. They're all very wise people, deeply committed to VU's moral purpose, and they all have a good sense of humour too. It's been deeply enriching and great fun working with all of them. George, thank you for your kind introduction to the documentary, and thank you for the confidence you showed in me 10 years ago, along with the then Deputy Chancellor Di Foggo and the University Council, to trust me with the privilege of being your Vice-Chancellor. As you will all have noticed from the documentary, I had a very special relationship with George Pappas over the years that we worked together, with our healthy blend of optimism and pessimism. Thank you, George, for your strategic oversight and your encouragement to be bold and innovative, and for the amazing dance we did together at our celebration of the centenary of the establishment of Footscray Tech. That, I think, was symbolic of an extraordinary partnership over a 9-year period. The boldness and innovation that our council has fostered has led VU to being recognised as a leading innovator in tertiary education through the VU Way and its block model of teaching. It's been a blockbuster, to coin a phrase, which has changed just about everything we do at Victoria University, and it's substantially uplifted our students' engagement in their learning and markedly increased student retention and academic achievement. Our boldness has sometimes been breathtaking, and being at the steering wheel has been quite an experience, most certainly a truly unforgettable experience. As well as thanking the Council for supporting this, thanks also to our teaching and learning leaders in both higher education and vocational education, as well as our research leaders, also with support from VU Innovations, for crafting our bold and innovative reforms. And a huge thank you to all the staff for implementing these reforms and innovations with a passion and so much devotion to VU's moral purpose. And we'll start to work on applying the VU Way to our vocational education next year, and we've already started working on establishing it in our postgraduate education. To see the increasing success of our students is especially rewarding, and I'm looking forward to our end-of-year graduation ceremonies in 2 weeks' time, which will be my last as Vice-Chancellor, but the first in which students studying in block mode will graduate. That will be a special celebration. Another really big achievement has been our increasingly deep engagement with the communities, the industries and the local governments across the west of Melbourne. The west of Melbourne has been one of, if not, the fastest growing region in Australia. As defined by the 7 municipalities in the Universities Act, the population has already reached 1.2 million, and despite the temporary slowdown of immigration caused by COVID-19, we still expect it to pass 1.7 million in the mid-2030s. And what an extraordinarily culturally diverse and vibrant population it is. I quickly fell in love with the west of Melbourne, and as you may have picked up, with the Western Bulldogs too. And I'd like to thank all the university partners across our region, such as the Western Bulldogs and Western Health, all our local municipalities, and all my friends across the west of Melbourne for their support and commitment to the success of their university, Victoria University. Sue and I have made our home in the west of Melbourne, and I'm very proud to say that I'll be honoured to succeed former Premier Steve Bracks as chair of the West of Melbourne Economic Development Alliance from January of next year, when Steve becomes Chancellor of Victoria University. It's a great thing for VU that Steve Bracks will be our next Chancellor, and thank you, Steve, for your superb chairing of the West of Melbourne Economic Development Alliance. Under the guidance of Steve Bracks, WMETA has brilliantly championed the importance of growing jobs in our region for the rapidly growing population through employment clusters or precincts, so that they're not living in substantially dormitory suburbs with excessive commuting times and joblessness. Thanks also especially to Wade Noonan and Rod Maddock, and also to Jim Williamson and Kate Roffey, and to my fellow board members of WMETA and who have been part of this WMETA journey. The idea of innovation, education, cultural and employment precincts in the west of Melbourne, in which Victoria University plays a key role, began with Footscray University Town in my early years as Vice-Chancellor, in partnership with the City of Maribyrnong. First with their then CEO Vince Haining, and since 2014 with Stephen Wall, the current CEO. The concept of Footscray University Town has gone from strength to strength, albeit a bit disrupted this year by COVID-19. However, the latest exciting development, which will also further strengthen our partnership with Western Health, is the establishment of the $1.7 billion new Footscray Hospital at our Footscray Park campus, and that will give Footscray University Town further impetus. Footscray University Town has been the pioneer for our precinct strategy, in which we're now planning and implementing a key role for the university in precincts in the Sunshine St Albans area, in Werribee, in the west of the City of Melbourne, with our new City West campus in Queen Street, and we hope in due course in Melton too. The west of Melbourne needs a great university of the 21st century, a century in which the vast majority of people will need a quality tertiary education, either vocational or higher education, to be successful in their work and in their lives. After 30 years as a university, I'm very confident that VU is well on the way to the vision of being a great university of the 21st century, offering a high quality education to any student from any background, from the west of Melbourne and beyond. World-class vocational education and pathways through our Polytechnic, through which we reinvented our TAFE division 5 years ago, is a critical element of our world-class dual-sector university. There's also been a strong upward trajectory in our research performance, which has been the main factor driving up our international rankings. We're now number 56 in the world's leading young universities, under 50 years of age. An extraordinary achievement for a university that's only 30 years old. Our research agenda is driven by a passion to have an impact on the sustainable development and planetary health and well-being of local and, by extension, global communities. That is, of course, in addition to helping the Western Bulldogs win the flag, as we did in 2016. On that subject, to VU's role in that marvellous Bulldogs AFL triumph, which, as you've heard in the video, established my reputation as an oracle. A highlight event for me was the BHERT, the Business Higher Education Roundtable Annual Awards Dinner in December 2016, when our partnership was showcased as a shining example of university-industry collaboration. In a very enjoyable stage discussion with Peter Gordon, the president of the Bulldogs, Peter very generously and eloquently acknowledged the important role that VU played in that success through our world-class sports science, research and innovation. It's a wonderful flagship partnership amongst many others that make the university ecosystem so vibrant. In 2020, incidentally, VU has entered the top 10 sports science universities in the world in the Shanghai Global Rankings, 5 years ahead of 2025, the date we set in VU's sports strategy. Continuing on the theme of research, as part of our transformational agenda, we established an entity called VU Research, through which our research is now done the VU way. This has also been path-breaking by the way in which it focuses and generates a critical mass of research fellows on the university's areas of research strength. As I mentioned earlier, the strong upward trend in the quantity and quality of our research output over the last decade has been the major driver of our rise in international rankings. It's also clear that our research is being increasingly influential, for example, in the area of public policy. In that context, I'm very pleased and honoured by what Gay Hamilton mentioned, that I'll join the research community as I move into my semi-retirement from the beginning of next year as an emeritus professor in the Mitchell Institute of Education and Health Policy. This also gives me an opportunity to thank Harold Mitchell for his foundation donation that enabled us to establish the Mitchell Institute, and to thank all the other benefactors who've contributed to the university in many ways, such as supporting scholarships and supporting our Student Support Fund in this challenging year of COVID-19. As well as our local partners and other partners across Victoria and Australia, thanks also go to our global partners, especially in Asia, such as Sunway in Malaysia, a range of long-standing partners in China, including Liaoning, Henan, Kufei and UIBE, NSBN in Sri Lanka and Gampat in India, and also Western partners such as Loughborough in the UK and UTEP in the US, and our partners who operate the block model and our many international research partners. We will not be a great university of the 21st century without continuing and expanding upon such international collaboration and contributing to the transformation of lives on the global stage. As I come to the end of a very full-on phase of my career in which I've been in CEO roles, I do want to make a special point of thanking my wife, Sue, and my family for all their love and support during this time. First, if you'll indulge me, I do want to mention my father, who was a teacher, and my mother, who was a nurse, who would have been 97 if they were still alive today. They instilled in me a great sense of the value of education. As teachers and nurses did not attend university in their day, like many of our students, I was the first in my family to attend university, and my parents were very proud of me going to university and progressing to be a professor. I met the love of my life, my wife Sue, in 1987 when we were colleagues at Murdoch University, and she was then in a more senior role than I was. Ever since that time, Sue has been a huge support to me in my career and has sacrificed a lot for me to devote so much time, effort and focus to my work. Our grown-up children, Emily and Mark, who themselves went to university, have been a constant joy as well. A massive thank you to you all. It has been a significant honour and a great privilege to be entrusted with the role of Vice-Chancellor and President. I'm just going to have a glass of water on that note, or a bottle of water. And I do want to thank all of my Deputy Vice-Chancellors and management teams, as well as all the staff who've worked with me over this period to ensure the success of the university, and especially its students. It's been a great team effort, and I've been so honoured and proud to be the team captain, superbly supported by the Vice-Chancellor's office led by Tara Shermans. In less than 2 weeks' time, I will hand on the captaincy to Professor Adam Shoemaker, with whom I've been having wonderful discussions in recent months about this extraordinary university. I wish him and all the university community every success in the next chapter of VU's life as it continues to pursue its moral purpose. As I approach the end of my remarks, Gay, I do particularly want to make a special point of saying how amazing our students are. Their diversity and their desire for the world to be a better place is heartening and uplifting. I love spending time with them and their student leaders. I've especially enjoyed the time I spent with some of them in the classroom. And let me add to you personally, Gay, that I know this is one of your last events in the role of Chancellor, though we're very pleased that you'll continue as a council member next year. Thank you for your support and very wise counsel, which has been very much appreciated in this year of COVID-19, along with Wayne Kaler-Thompson before you. In conclusion, let me say that I believe that we all need, indeed crave, a deep moral purpose in life. And Victoria University has a very, very powerful one. It's been an extraordinarily rewarding decade for me to be entrusted with leading the university's pursuit of that purpose. Thank you from the bottom of my heart to everyone who's been involved in the university's ecosystem for their support and friendship along the way.
Thank you, Peter, for your heartfelt words and for sharing your reflections with us. I wish you an enjoyable retirement. Thank you to everyone for tuning in today to watch the Farewell to Peter Dawkins, a Vice-Chancellor's Legacy documentary. I hope you've enjoyed celebrating Peter in this way. Peter, we wish you all the best. Thank you and goodbye. Wow.
Good.
Fantastic.
Fantastic.